Coming up next on the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
He's such a presence in the nomadic world that, he plays himself in that movie Nomadland that won Best Picture last year. His whole thing is that he's kind of a voice for a lot of the people who do van life and live out of their vehicles as a necessity, as opposed to the luxury kind of sprinter van culture.
That was Steve Moore describing one of the big influencers in the van life movement. If you ever wanted to get your vehicle dialed in for camping, you should stick around for today's episode. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the show. Today's episode is sponsored by Stonefly Nets, putting quality before quantity with their handcrafted custom wood landing nets. Please head over to wetflyswing.com/stonefly right now to get your custom net today. That's wetflyswing.com/stonefly, STONEFLY, to get started right now. Steve Moore is here from Campin' Car to show us how to turn your vehicle into a camping machine. We discover how you can actually turn almost any vehicle into a camper, what the van life world is all about, a little glimpse into the van life, and how to organize your gear for your next fishing, camping, or outdoor excursion. So without further ado, here we go. Steve Moore from campingcar.com. How's it going, Steve?
It's going good, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking a little time to dig into a little bit of we were kind of talking before we got started on if we had to pick a main keyword for this, there's a number of things that come out, like van life, trunk camping, car camping, all these different things. But essentially, you guys build this really cool product that makes it easy for people to essentially camp out of their car. And you've got a cool story about heading up to Alaska. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But just bring us back. Maybe this will bring us here to start to tell us, how did this come to be where you have a business selling these basically car build-out kits?
Yeah. So, about a little over, it's been like about 4 years ago at this point, I was working a pretty nice, comfortable office job in Seattle. It was a cool company. It was a cool organization, and it was, an outdoor-based nonprofit. But I just kind of had gotten, I was in my late 20s and feeling a little stir crazy, just going to an office every day and just wanting to do more with, kind of the energy I had. And so I decided I was going to quit and made a plan to buy a Honda Element and kind of convert it into a mobile camper, and drove that mobile camper up to Alaska and lived out of it for a good 6 months and made my, money at that time playing music gigs in various venues and festivals, and just kind of really, taking time to explore the beauty of, the northern reaches of our continent, and, do outdoor activities and hike and mountaineer, and just kind of soak in some space away from it all, that was beyond what, my office job's vacation time would ever allow me to have. And that whole camper build that we, had designed was really nice and professional looking, and something that I made with my co-founder Martin. We used 3D modeling and CNC machinery to make something that was really well fitted and clean looking, and people just thought it was so cool and so well made that they would say things like, you guys could sell these and make lots of money. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. We'll see. And I had moved back to Washington, and actually had moved into an apartment that Martin was living in, and he had a room open up, and I would kind of just, we might be complaining about our jobs or something, and I'd be like, man, people were really serious, I think, when they were saying we could sell these camper builds and smaller vehicles for a living. Maybe we should just do it. And one day we were both just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's start an LLC right now. Let's figure this out. I think we've got the skills to make it happen. And over 3 years later, we're making it happen more than ever before.
Wow. So describe a little bit about what the product is, or the lines of products that people are most interested in that you guys build.
Yeah, for sure. So we specialize right now in kind of DIY assembly, flat packable camper builds that you can use in a variety of vehicles. The main service these offer is like an elevated level sleeping platform. Some of these platforms, like the Trunk Bunk, can expand and contract to different lengths, while others are more of just like a simple non-expanding platform called the Basic Bunk. There's also some storage solutions that kind of work in tandem with these platforms to give you some shelves and ways to organize your stuff. And it's just a really nice, easy way to get a really high quality setup for basic camping in the back of your car, or truck or small van or whatever. Wherever you might have a nice level surface in a vehicle that you could put something like this. And we also do like fully custom camper builds and full van conversions that will include everything from solar to air conditioning to propane stoves and cabinetry and fancy transforming furniture. It's the sky's kind of the limit in terms of what we can do. And we like to think we come in here and offer everything from like the very basics to, something really nice and modular and custom for people who want to go that route.
That's cool. Yeah. So you guys pretty much do it all. And it's interesting because there's a number of different products out there you see. And one of them you see are these pop-up tents that are really popular now. You know what I mean? Like they're on top of the car. And I've always looked at those and thought like, wow, it's like this huge thing on top of your car. It's just this other thing. It probably doesn't help with gas mileage, right? And all that stuff.
No.
And you kind of essentially do the same. I mean, you're building, essentially a bed, the same sort of thing, just in the car. So the challenge is that, especially I could imagine a Honda Element or some other smaller car, that you put a bed in there, then where's your space to do everything else? Talk about that when you do this Element. And well, first talk about what year the Element was, and then talk about the challenges to building a 6-month thing because Elements aren't huge, right?
They're not. No, I mean they are boxy, so there's a element of space involved where you've got like more headroom and a more just sort of, they're really similar to like a CRV in their kind of guts and their platform, but the body is way boxier. And so the back of it is only like, in terms of actual length, 5.5 feet.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm 6'3".
Holy cow.
So there's some design modular kind of changes we had to make. Like, for example, the way my Element build was, it was sort of like this raised platform. So there's a lot of storage space underneath, and we had these like cubby lids on top of the platform that you could use to access the space underneath.
Oh, wow.
And then I had a small kind of shelf cabinet thing on the side that I could use for storing, food and other essentials. And the way I essentially made the sleeping work was that at night I would scoot my passenger seat forward. The back seats were totally gone, which is easy to do in an Element.
okay.
You can just take them out without hardly any trouble at all. It takes about a minute to take each
Oh, wow.
seat out. It's a really cool modular vehicle in that way. But to sleep at night, I would scoot the front passenger seat forward, and then I had this sort of these kind of supports that would pull out of the platform, and I would flip out this sort of extension of the platform that would rest on those supports and the armrest of the driver's seat, and that would give me an extra foot of space. And then I had like a trifold kind of memory foam mattress that would then flip out over that. And there you go. You've got like 6.5 feet of sleeping space and a Honda Element, and you're good to go.
That's it. Yeah. So now you see how you do it. So your head was essentially towards the back of the car, like towards the hatchback.
Yeah, and then my feet would be kind of upright by the seats, which was it was slightly narrower than like the area around my head and torso. But we've done that kind of setup now for a bunch of different vehicles. We've done it in a Honda CRV, one of the builds we offer, that is kind of a custom install, so people still have to come to our shop, but is essentially a very similar build where you have, storage underneath, and then you have, a flip out extension that gives you 6.5 feet of sleeping space in a CRV, a RAV4, smaller even crossover SUVs, and you can really do a lot with smaller vehicles as long as you think creatively about how to make the most of your limited space.
Yep. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. So basically, you guys can do. I can see that now with a smaller car. You can take, almost any car. And what is the? I think about, what would be the weirdest, kind of strangest car you guys have worked on? Has there been anything that sticks out? Like, wow, this is you wouldn't expect a trunk bunk in here.
We did a custom build on a Honda Fit recently.
Oh wow.
So someone, our
Damn.
customer Linda, was like retiring and wanted to essentially kayak around the United States for an extended period of time and didn't want to have to deal with hotels and B&Bs and all that stuff. So she had us build her a small camper build in her Honda Fit. We used a lot of the same design principles that we used in the Element build, and it worked great. And she's a shorter person, so
Yeah.
it was a little more of a vibe. I don't know if I could make a Honda Fit camper work for myself
No.
realistically, but she made it work, and she's even having us build like a wooden rooftop cargo box for her that was custom fit to be narrow enough to fit next to her kayak on the roof. So she's going to have like a roof box for a lot of her gear, her kayak on her roof, and all of her sleeping and
Wow.
essentials inside. So she's just kind of a super like cool modular little tiny camper that gets really good gas mileage.
Yep, it's interesting because that's obviously a key. Good gas mileage, especially these days.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because at a certain point you get to like, okay, you got the Honda Fit, which is the extreme there, and then you go to the other end. It's like, okay, you see these giant, cool, these whatever Sprinter van type stuff, right? All these different things that are out there. So, and I think you guys had when we met at one of the shows. I think you might have had. I think it was like a Dodge. Did you have a Dodge van at the show? Yeah. And the Dodge van was, you see those all the time, like, wow, these things are amazing. Is it a big difference between the little Honda thing, the small car versus the van build out and how you guys, is it just completely different about how you design or how somebody would DIY their own?
In some ways, yeah. The biggest difference I'd say between the two is that, like, in a small car, you're dealing with a lot more kind of contour lines and sort of
Oh, yeah.
weird geometry sometimes, and, unlevel surfaces that you kind of have to keep in mind when you're doing it. But we really try and think in a way that, regardless of how big the space is, we think from the perspective of like, how do we make the most of it? And I think a lot of the smaller builds we do end up influencing our decisions and creativity on the bigger ones, and vice versa.
Gotcha. Well, if somebody was listening here, and let's just take, I'm trying to think of, a car. We could take a van. Let's take this van. This might be a good example of one. Like you see these little, they're not the Sprinter vans, but they're like the Dodge. They're the small van. It's almost like a small car, but they're vans, right?
Promaster City.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Promaster. So if somebody had one of those or something similar, and they wanted to build out something, is it as simple as, take some 2x4s and put in there? What would you tell them to make sure they get something that maybe isn't, if they're not a super engineer, but something that's cool? How do they start?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's, you just kind of have to reverse engineer what you want. And so for some people, they might live in a climate where sleeping in a vehicle without insulation is, totally just a thing they don't want to think about doing because it's too hot or it's too cold.
Right.
And so you have to think, okay, like how much comfort do I need when I'm traveling on the road? Like you can really do very basic. You could just build, like you're saying, out of 2x4s, a sleeping platform and put a bed in the back and, build it high enough to where you can keep your gear underneath it
Mm-hmm.
and just drive around and just camp at trailheads or camp at fishing spots and camp at hunting spots and call it a day. And, just wear warm clothes or, have a warm sleeping bag if it's cold at night. But for some people, they want that extra level of comfort, and there's a lot of things you can do. You can, insulate the interior and then put up some kind of paneling or carpeting on the inside. You can build a floor. You can, install a basic electrical system. And these days, for people who do want to do DIY, there's just like an unbelievable amount of information out there how to do it. You type in how to install solar panels on a
Right.
van, you're going to get 100 plus YouTube videos. They're all probably going to be pretty good at explaining the process of doing it. If you're handy and you want to do that stuff yourself, there's just like an unbelievable amount of information out there to help you do it. And, if you don't like the way one person explains it, there will be 50 others to, explain it better.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. Absolutely.
It's huge. Yeah. And I have a friend that's, I guess I've got a few friends that are kind of doing this, but I have one friend who's been traveling around the world in his van, and he's got this, he's got this cool, real unique van, but he just recently basically parked his van partly because of gas prices. He's over in Europe somewhere now, but he parked his van, and now he's in a sailboat sailing around, right? And he's like doing the same thing. It's like pretty much it's van life in a sailboat.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's kind of in the electrical stuff. That's the part I don't really know too much about, and obviously insulation. There's a number of things here, right? Like you said, you can take from the very low level, like put a platform in, versus kind of what you guys do. So when people are doing this, I guess it depends on where you're at. If you're in a hot environment or a cold environment, you kind of have to have the insulation. But if not, do you guys find like a lot of your customers aren't going the insulation route, or what's that look like?
It depends. I think most people who have us work on a van, even some of the smaller vans, like we've done a few Promaster cities or Ford Transit Connects, and if someone's bringing that to our custom shop to have a build installed, sometimes the thing they're really having us do is the insulation, the paneling, the electrical, and then they might have us do like a simple bed system in there to complement that, but they want to make the interior of it nice. But people who are bringing like a Honda CRV or an Element to us, like there's almost never any of that work, because the vehicle's not really set up for it anyway. You would have to insulate an Element. I don't know what you have to rip out the paneling and like just try and stuff some wool in there or something. It's just not really practical. So we see, it really depends on the vehicle. Some people don't want to like camp in a van that has just like a bunch of exposed metal, and that doesn't have a nice like kind of homey feel to it in their eyes. They want that remedied with insulation and nice looking wood paneling and carpeting and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. To get the full. Basically building, and that's what you're building. You guys build campers. You could go to these, go buy a camper, right? Do you guys look at that? When you see all these campers, tons of these RVs out there, right? When you guys build these like at the highest level, when you do everything, electrical, solar, is it essentially, and are you also doing that? Are you creating an RV where literally you're putting in sinks and stuff like that too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We, are building vans a lot of the times to a point where they can be reclassified as a Class B RV, in terms of their licensing, because they might have a toilet and a sink and a shower and all that stuff. It's all possible. And talking about boats, like we are in Port Townsend, which is a pretty famous, I guess, port town.
Yep.
The maritime culture here is really strong, and a lot of the people who work for us or who even are on our team of founders come from the maritime industry and are used to working with kind of complex electrical and amenity systems that are based in boats. And building it in vans is really similar in a lot of ways. And it's really kind of a cool crossover. We're a small town, but we have this really great kind of culture of maritime and woodworking and all that stuff, and all that kind of comes together with what we do.
That's it. Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like there's tons of resources out there, and like you said, there's hundreds of great YouTube channels. So somebody, if they wanted to dig in deeper, they could just basically go out there and find somebody that they like to follow, and they can learn how to build, right? If they want to do solar or whatever else. It sounds like it's pretty, these days there's so many people doing it, right? Is that kind of
absolutely
how it is? Yeah,
there's just a huge DIY culture around it, and it's one of those things where like we encounter a lot of people too who might be doing a lot of the work themselves, but they have certain aspects of the build they don't want to do. A really common one is We'll do window installs for people because just cutting holes in the side of the sheet metal of their
Oh,
Mercedes
wow.
Sprinter is just a little out of their comfort zone, and they would rather trust the
Yeah.
professionals with that. But they might be doing literally everything else themselves besides
Damn.
just that window install or some other or electrical. That's
Yeah.
another common one that people want help with, that they're like, I could probably figure this out, but they just don't want to risk wiring something the
No.
wrong way and causing a fire in their van. So
Yeah, exactly. Or I always joke about, for me, it's like the trailer lights. I all these years,
mhm.
it's like I used to try to do my own trailer lights, the simplest thing, but for some reason, the ground and stuff, right? It never works out. You always end up, or, just in water, it ends up getting, your connection. So I don't even do trailer lights anymore. It's like I bring it to a professional, do the lights, right? And so you guys are that professional. How did you get to a point where you're doing, like a window and all this stuff? Did you slowly just build these skills where now you can build this whole thing? It seems like for me, building a wood bed or a wood structure in the back is a lot different than like cutting a hole in sheet metal.
Yeah, it really is just we have a group of people who work with us, who have been doing a lot, most of them who work on that aspect of the vans were doing it themselves before they came to Camp and Car. They were doing it on their own vans. They were doing vans for other people, maybe more, small scale, kind of just helping people out. And they just hone those skills. And then, we all there's a lot of serendipity, I think, with our company and kind of just the people we've met and, brought onto the team over the years, and just the right people at the right time. And they just have those skills and they're happy to share them and teach other people on the team how to do it. And a lot of it is not as scary as you might think, or not as complex as you might think. It's just involves having a steady hand and knowing how to trace something and be confident in those moves. But we're always happy to help people whenever they encounter those barriers.
That's it. God, that's really great. So you guys have a little bit of a team there. What has that been? How has that been? I'm always interested in that. As you're building things out, are you kind of finding like friends and family, or is this something where you're finding other people, outside of your kind of inner circle?
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of both, especially in the early days. It was a little more like, people we were familiar with or acquainted with, kind of joining the team. But kind of no matter what, we've always, done our due diligence to, because, it's just one of those things where like, just because you like someone as a friend doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be the ideal colleague. And, so we've always kind of done our due diligence to check people out and, put them through some reference checks and stuff. Nowadays, it's definitely more, we're starting to attract people outside our circles. We've
Yep.
got someone coming here, moving to Port Townsend from Seattle to start working for us in July, someone we never met before. And we're, unlike a lot of companies, it seems like we're not having difficulty, finding people when we need them. Because I think we offer something a little different in terms of, not just what we're doing, but like our company culture and our kind of work style and all that stuff is appealing to a lot of people who are feeling a little burnt out with the typical kind of arrangement of everything.
Yeah, I gotcha. So you guys are rolling along. Well, and just to tie this up on the, if somebody wants to come in and do it themselves, do you guys have, I would imagine some of your stuff is probably you're not sharing necessarily all the templates out there on. With what you guys build, talk about the difference between, say, building the bunk, just a bed versus stuff with compartments. Talk a little bit about like the wood, what you choose and how, like weight, because I'd imagine if you put too much wood in there, now you're putting a bunch of weight too in the back of a car. Is that an issue?
Yeah, it depends. So we definitely, weight is obviously a concern for vehicles. You don't, everything has its payload capacity, and you don't want to weigh it down too much for the safety of the vehicle or gas in general. But we build, most of the products, and a lot of the custom work is done with plywood, and plywood is a more weight efficient way to kind of make something, as opposed to a bunch of 2x4s, and it's strong.
Oh,
And
so that's the thing. And Steve, on this, just to interrupt for a second, and I think about this because we have a camper, right? And
yeah,
And I remember when we first got that camper, because I was a rookie on the campers, right? And we got this. It was like a 20-foot, not a gigantic, but a pretty decent sized camper, a pole behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we got in there, we're looking around, and we were like, it's like one of those things where you're like, oh crap, we got this thing. It looks kind of flimsy. You start opening it up. You're like, what the hell? They're using like 2x2s, and then you start looking around, and the thing is like, holy crap! But they have to do that because essentially you can't build a freaking camper with 2x4 or something like that, because otherwise it's going to weigh. Well, and this was like an ultralight too, right? So they're trying to keep it lighter weight. But the issue is you got that struggle. I know even with the camper, it's that you're pulling it, it's bouncing. You got this thing that's moving that can fall apart versus you can't be too heavy. So how do you guys? Yeah, and now talk about how you guys balance that same issue.
Yeah, I mean, it is a balance, and I think what we do is where a lot of those more mass-produced campers kind of go wrong in our view is we use really high quality plywood instead of like particle board or MDF or some of the with vinyl veneers on it. It's like we're using cabinet grade stuff or marine grade stuff that's really high ply, strong, stable, and it's a lot of it is how you join it. There's like a certain intelligence to the design of things where you join things in a way where there's a lot of support and a lot of structural integrity, and from there you can mix the good quality plywood with things like 1x3s, really smaller scale pieces of lumber, and you can do it in a way that is super strong. Our trunk bunk, bed platforms, we haven't been able to break those in our torture testing. We've put hundreds and hundreds of pounds on them, and it's just a frame made from 3/4 inch maple plywood with 1x3 hemlock bed slats on it, and it's like so strong. But because there's just a lot of interlocking joinery that creates that strength, and so it's having people on the team who are engineers who can design this stuff and understand physics and all that stuff is a huge component to ensuring that it's quality while also not being super heavy, and not being difficult to maneuver, because a lot of these products are meant to be taken in and out of the vehicle when you're going back and forth between camping or just using it as your daily driver, and we want that to be easy for people, so
right. So that's the other big thing here that you have going. So you got a couple things. You got and your stuff does look clean. We'll put some links in the show notes to like the trunk bunk and stuff. But it's the wood, you can just tell, right? I mean, when you see it, it's not just a piece of plywood. It's actually kind of looks glossy. You can tell it's like nice custom fit. But the other thing is that it comes out. That's like one of your selling points. Like literally, this is something you could go camping for the weekend, put your thing in there, and literally in a minute just kind of pop it out. Is that kind of how you guys roll?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we, at least, talk about our standard line of products, where it's like you can just pull this out when you don't need to use it and put it back in when you want to, because, a lot of it is about getting the most out of your vehicle so that you don't have to own multiple vehicles. You don't have to have something additional in your parking lot that's just collecting, rust a lot of the year. There's a, art to kind of getting the most out of what you already have, and thinking beyond the sort of conventional RV mindset when it comes to what do you really need when you're on the road and camping.
Right. This is cool. Okay, so that is another big factor is that building something that can kind of pop out. And again, so if somebody wanted to build something similar, where would you send them for a template? Do you guys have something that kind of shows a similar thing, or could they just go to your website, look at your thing, and maybe kind of just build something similar looking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't sell like templates or anything like that, but we're obviously everything we do is in a sense based off of something someone else has already done. Like our trunk bunk bed is based off of like a really quite common expanding bed design that a lot of DIYers have done. So what essentially we're doing a lot of the time is we're looking at, okay, what's a common thing that we see people making on their own on YouTube or on Instagram, and how can we kind of redesign that in a way that we think will be better and offer it to people, so that if they don't have the tools or they don't have the time to DIY something like this, then they can get this from us, and it'll essentially fill that niche of what they were looking for, but we'll just have it ready to go for them.
Ready to go. Okay, cool. So, and if they have a car, and they could obviously just call you if they have some random car that,
Yeah.
I mean, you guys could build it, but you do have actually, you can go in there. And how does that work because you have like on your site, you can actually go buy stuff. So how would you buy something and know that it's going to fit your car?
Yeah, I mean, we do our best to kind of provide as much information to help determine that as possible because, there's so many different cars out there. So we couldn't possibly have like a claim to know exactly is this going to work in your exact car for every vehicle. But a lot of it is just about understanding like what the product is and what your car is and is that compatible. So if you have like a minivan that has like a nice flat area with 6 feet of length, the 6-foot trunk bunk is going to work great. But if you have a small SUV that has seats that fold down, but they don't fold down flat, and there's like a foot extra of height in the front as opposed to the back, and it's lumpy, it's probably not going to work. And so you have to understand, like, we put a lot of information on there about like, check the dimensions of your interior space. Is it flat? Like, what are you working with? And if you're unsure about any of that stuff, obviously we'll help you figure it out. Call or email us, and it's like we'll have a conversation about what you've got and what you're trying to make happen and how we can get you there.
Today's episode is sponsored by Bearvault, keeping wild adventure going strong and assuring your next backcountry trip stays memorable, epic, and safe. Bearvault builds a rugged polycarbonate locking canister that keeps bears and other critters out of your stuff. When we started this little series, they only had 2 sizes, one large one, one smaller one. Now they've added 2 new sizes to their mix. So now even the day hikers, if you're heading out for a day hike into anywhere where there's bears or other critters, they've got a Bearvault to match what you need. Believe it or not, food storage is a key consideration when heading into the backcountry hiking, fishing, or camping. The Bearvault is leading the way in food protection. Be the guy who has that epic trip, not the guy who has to hike out early because of improper food storage. You can check out Bearvault right now, wetflyswing.com/Bearvault. That's BEARVAULT. You support this podcast by clicking through that link to Bearvault. Do you guys get a lot of calls from people that are kind of, picking your brain about stuff, but maybe, I guess they could be on the fence, right? They don't know if they want to necessarily buy something or if they want to build something. Do you kind of, I guess you got to kind of filter through that a little bit, right? You can't spend all the time.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's we're happy to do that. I mean, that's why we're here. It's like we're here to help people have awesome adventures in their vehicle, like we've had, and by offering our advice and our input and our honest feedback about what is and isn't going to work. Like, we hope to bring value into people's lives that way, and sometimes that results in a sale and sometimes it doesn't, but that's not always the point. The point is, like, from a larger purpose standpoint, to just help people have fun and do it in a way that's doesn't require necessarily the manufacturing of a huge RV every time someone wants to get out there.
Right. Yeah. And the problem with the RVs is that they're giant. They sit around and, they're just, gas, right? Especially now, right? Gas prices.
Oh, yeah. It's
crazy, right? I mean, you put it, how does that work when I know when you're pulling something like that, it drops your gas mileage down, super low. When you're adding, a trunk bunk or that whole thing, say they build out kind of the basic stuff you guys have, right? I mean, what are you talking there? Is that like a couple 100 pounds, or how much weight is that?
It's not very much. I mean, so like a bed platform like the trunk bunk is usually like around 40 pounds, and the whole like home on wheels kit, which includes like some shelving units, is about 100. And so it's really pretty negligible in terms of impact on gas mileage, because you're not putting something on the roof that's impacting your aerodynamics. Ultimately you're putting the same amount of weight as you would if it's only you, or if it's you and one other person and some camping gear. It's not really any more weight than if you had instead had 3 people in the back, in your back row seats. So I think for the most part, people don't seem to indicate that it impacts the mileage negatively. And I know even in my own Honda Element that was full of stuff that I was because I was living in it, so I had like
Right.
all of my backpacking gear, all of my clothes, all, just
What were you getting in that thing? What was that thing getting for mileage?
with a Thule like cargo box on top
Yeah.
on the highway, I was getting between 20 and 22 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's a vehicle with, all-wheel drive and other, things that you might not necessarily associate with good mileage.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And nowadays, I mean, I imagine the more we go in this, the cool thing about the higher gas prices is that, I mean, who knows how long this lasts, but it's going to keep forcing the electric. Do you guys think
Yeah.
you see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a lot of electric? I'm not even sure what electric cars would work with this.
It's one of those things in the industry where there's definitely a trend now towards electric vans. We haven't actually had a full electric car come through our shop yet for a build or anything, but I think, there's companies now like VW, there's some new companies like Canoe that are coming out with all electric vans. And, we would love to kind of get involved with that. And we see ourselves, maybe potentially buying some of those vans someday and adding them to our line of pre-built, ready to go vans that people can buy fully converted by us. I think it's going to be tough at first because there's just going to be such high demand for them. Maybe right now it's hard to get a van, period.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It doesn't like
or a truck. Yeah.
It's like it's hard to get a van that's a gas guzzling monster, as opposed to, I'm sure when these electric vans start hitting the market, it's just going to be like a huge demand surge. But we are definitely interested in encouraging that direction of things and see ourselves kind of getting more involved in that electric van world as time goes on, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Well, you mentioned the Bob Wells, and I wasn't familiar with that. I'm kind of interested because I love, the kind of, you mentioned like the nonprofit. Can you describe, I don't know how well you know that story, like this guy, and talk about, do you know Bob Wells pretty well, his story?
Yeah, I mean, so Bob is, one of those kind of YouTube van life celebrities who has one of those channels that's like super helpful, just every topic you could possibly imagine. He's covered it on his channel, CheapRVliving, and he's such a presence in the nomadic world that he plays himself in that movie Nomadland that won Best Picture last year.
Oh, wow.
His whole thing is that he's kind of a voice for a lot of the people who do van life and live out of their vehicles as a necessity, as opposed to like, the luxury kind of sprinter van culture. And he has a nonprofit that provides a lot of really helpful resources for people who need to do this, education. There's a lot of gatherings where there's skill training and there's kind of simple conversions provided by the community that are free of charge. And they do a lot of really cool things. And we developed our Home on Wheels kit in tandem with kind of what they saw as being like the essentials in a minivan conversion kit. And we have kind of continued to work with them on some things, and hopefully we'll be converting vans for them in the future again. And just, it's a really cool community that they have. And just, the value that his YouTube channel can offer alone is huge for people, especially if they're interested in DIY van builds or want to learn more about different products and all that good stuff.
Gotcha. So the you got a couple links: the CheapRVliving YouTube channel, the Nomadland. These sounds like another movie I need to add to the list I haven't seen. So you've been working with Bob Wells and to like help building out their stuff.
Yeah, we provided a Home on Wheels kit to them in April 2021 for one of their clients. They occasionally will just award a van to someone who is kind of on the edge of homelessness, and we provided a kit for one of those individuals. And that kit was sort of developed with their input about what they saw as being like a good balanced kind of simple product that could be really good for living and camping out of, that might resonate with the kind of van life community at large.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because you've got a lot going on. You've got you've got the extreme levels of literally the homeless, right? The very, all sorts of people in RVs and, just crazy stuff out there. But then you've got other people out there, which is the thing maybe you don't see as much, but people that are maybe, I don't know if it's choosing is the right word, but they're living out of it too. I mean, what do you see that kind of around where you see kind of people that are choosing to kind of be living out of their van? Well, like you did, right? I mean, 6 months, you could live out of it for 6 months. I'm thinking more like, I guess I'm thinking of the extreme, like people that are maybe struggling and they're forced to do it versus people that are actually just enjoying and camping around, right? You got these two extremes, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an interesting aspect of this kind of culture of van life, because you really do have people who feel like for whatever reason that's their option at the moment, and they can't afford rent, or there's a lot of people in that sort of cheap RV living world who might be older and are on Social Security, and it's not enough for them to pay for bills in a conventional housing situation, but it's enough for them to get by if they're living in a van. And so that's sort of the route they choose to go. And what their community does is really kind of provide the resources to do it safely and in a way that is as comfortable as possible. And then you also have the higher echelons of society where they're spending $200,000 to $300,000 on a Mercedes Sprinter and a conversion, and maybe like some exclusive like campground kind of subscriptions that are thousands of dollars a month. And it's it's sort of like it goes as high or as low as you really as you can imagine.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, there's a lot. So it's good. At least we have a resource here, and there's probably a way of connecting with Bob, and I'm sure through his channel, if you wanted to help, kind of help out some of these people they're struggling. I'm sure there's ways we can connect. I guess would he be a good person to connect with, just to try to, if you wanted to help out some of these people?
I think the really, if you're looking to help like people in this world, his nonprofit, the Homes on Wheels Alliance, is you can donate to them. They provide those services, and that's probably the most direct way you can get involved. And they also have like volunteer events, and I think look for people to kind of provide, if they're handy, especially provide direct services to help build out vans for people who might need them at various events. Especially, their activity is really concentrated in like the Southwest, because the Southwest has just so much public land, and there's so many places. That's one thing that people ask us a lot about is like, well, if you are living in a van or you're traveling in a van, like, and you don't want to pay for a RV campground every night, like where do you go? And so like, well, did you a lot of people just don't know. Did you know you can camp on Bureau of Land Management land or National Forest land for free anytime, basically? And that's something that there's a lot of that in the American West, the Southwest specifically, Utah, Nevada, Arizona. There's just so many places you can camp free of charge, and you're not going to have a shower necessarily, but you're going to have a beautiful, sparsely populated scenic space that you can hang out and enjoy, that might be close-ish to a town where you can get those services if you need them.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. There's so much to this topic because, it's cool, just from the build out, right? Because we can go into talking about just how to do it, right? The whole solar panels. And if you think of the RV, right, you're plugging in your thing to whatever, plugging in the camper. But a lot of times, I mean, you're not really, basically the stuff you guys are building is more like solar, and you're off the grid, right?
Yeah, that's kind of that's sort of the goal of a lot of what we design, is the ability to be off grid. And some of the vans might have like a shore power plug-in for charging your battery system when you're parked at a house or a campground. But really what our goal is to allow people to go a little farther, go a little more off the beaten path, kind of think outside the norms of our RV and camping culture, and allow you to connect more with nature and the outdoors on your excursions.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, what is the You mentioned it. It's hard to find these vans. I mean, would you have any tips? You're in that world a little bit. I mean, if somebody wanted to try to find a van, I mean, I guess they're all like $40,000 and more. I mean, what would be your tip if somebody would love to get one of these vans? Maybe it's got more miles on it or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Where would you? Yeah, where would you direct somebody if they really wanted to get one, but they didn't have necessarily like $50K or $100K to buy one of these?
Of course, yeah. I think that for a lot of people nowadays, finding a good used vehicle deal. Like I bought a Toyota Tacoma this year for a crazy deal, and I found it on Facebook Marketplace. And I think that there's so many groups out there on Facebook specifically for van sales, used vehicle sales, used van sales. And even if the dominant market prices are kind of high right now, you all can always find a deal. There's always someone who is just trying to get rid of the thing, or they're not paying attention to the market prices, or they don't know what they have, and they just kind of following those groups, checking Craigslist. But I think I've had more luck on the Facebook groups, honestly, just in terms of having a wider variety of deals available and seeing kind of just because it's just people putting stuff out there that they have. And, like I said, a lot of them are just trying to get rid of it quickly, or a lot of them are, some people buy a van with the intention of converting it and life gets in the way. And maybe it's like a half finished project. And if someone doesn't mind kind of stepping into finding that weird, like kind of in between van that's sort of on its way, but needs more done, then I really can't recommend just going on the Facebook groups, the buy, sell, trade groups enough to really be a good resource for finding a used vehicle these days.
That's great. No, that's a great tip, and I wasn't thinking about that. I know. Yeah, Facebook Marketplace. I mean, that's another one of those killer resources. So we'll kind of make note of that, and I'll do a little bit of research as well, because we're in the market of finding another vehicle now. And it's like, okay, what's the vehicle we want? Okay, a van would be cool, but then there's maybe an SUV, or then you got gas mileage. I mean, for you, when you think out, say your next vehicle, money is no option sort of thing. What are you getting if you could just get whatever right now?
Oh man, I mean, I've got my partner and we've got a Crosstrek and a Tacoma, so we're pretty set in terms of basic vehicle functions. But I do want to get at some point, I do want to get a van and maybe a smaller one. And if money was no object, I might get if I was getting a van and money was no object, I'd probably go with a 4-wheel drive Ford Transit or something like that, because they have a model that's tall enough for me to stand in fully. It's like 6'7" or something. And the 4-wheel drives are, they're a little more affordable than the Sprinters, but they're also easier to fix, and kind of there's more parts for them and more mechanics that can work on the Ford vans as opposed to the Sprinter vans, which are German made, and they're a lot more complicated.
Dodge doesn't even make it, right? Is it all Mercedes now making that Sprinter now? I guess the newer ones.
The new Promasters aren't made by Mercedes anymore, and they're great vans. I think they're super cool, and obviously we sell them, we buy them and sell them and convert them. Just thinking from my perspective as being as tall as I am and as adventurous and as I am, wanting that 4-wheel drive, I would probably go with that, just to kind of and then maybe not the biggest and longest model, but either that or one of these upcoming electric vans. The only downside to the electric vans is someone who is kind of a Alaska junkie. You can't get up there yet.
Plugins.
Yeah, I don't think the Alcan has full electrical charging station capacity yet for people to drive all the way up there. So if you're fine staying in the lower 48, I'd say electric van is the way, and I'm sure they'll have it up there eventually, so it's only a matter of time.
That's right. Yeah, the electric vans, and that's part of the thing. So cool. Yeah, and I agree that I remember when I was looking at the Dodge a while back, it's front wheel drive. it doesn't really do it for me because, I mean, God, you imagine you're going over the mountain in some snow. That's not a real great vehicle probably to have, the four-wheel drive, you know what I mean? You got to add on a little bit. And look at Ford, look at the F-150, the Lightning, right? I mean, they just came out, they got the now all-electric pickup.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine these vans are they got to be, if they're doing this for a pickup, which pull a lot of weight, I'd imagine the vans are right behind them.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And like I said, there's companies like, VW and some startups like this company called Canoe that it's kind of worth checking out, where they're coming out with electric vans. And I remember on my travels, I actually in the Yukon met these Australian guys who had it was kind of the craziest van. It was like, I don't remember the build of the van, but they had essentially converted a van into electric via solar power, and they couldn't.
Oh, wow.
They could go only like 50 miles a day,
Yeah.
but it was kind of to prove a point, I think, on their part.
Yeah.
They were like, we're just going to let this vehicle take us as far as it can every day, and you're going to enjoy that slower, kind of pace of travel. And they seemed to love it. And the fact that they had converted this van to run off of solar power entirely was pretty impressive to me.
That is cool. Well, where are you guys heading next now? You got all this stuff. You got some cool products here. We talked about some resources, Bob, wells and things like that. Are you guys, I mean, what's your next step? How are you guys going to be doubling down? Are you going to just keep doing more of the same, or, are you going to be building out like a new YouTube channel, or what do you got going?
Well, I mean, it's always, we're always innovating and coming up with new stuff. I mean, I think the, products that we are creating will just continue to expand. We're going to be releasing like a wooden rooftop cargo box that if someone is looking for something a little cooler looking than like a Thule, that they can get that from us. And just more and more of the standard products will continue to become available. And we bought our first brand new Promaster, as it were, last week. Actually, it came in from the factory to the dealership, and we took it home, and we're going to be building that out. So the Promaster we were selling at the Sportsman show where I met you was the 2015, I believe, and this one will be a 2022. So totally new with less than 1,000 miles on it, and selling that as a fully converted van, and kind of increasing the amount of those vans we're offering on the market, and hopefully kind of moving towards a different variety of vans too, like smaller vans or electric vans in addition to that Promaster, and just kind of continuing to innovate in that sphere, and really just making things that are a result of a lot of the time, what people are asking for time and time again in the custom shop, and then being like, okay, we get a lot of requests for this sort of thing, so let's just start making it widely available in our store so people can just purchase it from us, as opposed to having us have to custom make it for them.
Custom made. Well, what is that? Just so somebody that doesn't know, if they're that 2022 Promaster, what did that thing cost you guys?
The van itself,
it
was about 44,000.
So that's not bad though. I mean, 44,000 literally for a brand new, and that's the thing about these vans, right? Or even cars in general, right? You get the right car. I mean, literally, you might even be able to sell it for more money in a few years, right? They're not losing their value.
No, it's kind of crazy right now, because we were looking, just at the market about, okay, well, if we just wanted to buy one that was pretty new but it was used, it was more expensive. Like people were selling nuts. Like 2020 Promasters with 10,000 miles for 52 grand, and we're like, no.
No.
If you can wait the 6 months it takes to go to the dealership, have it totally custom made, choose your color, choose your bells and whistles, and you can wait the 6 months, just do that. I can't in good faith.
So is that the same? Is that the same with all? I mean, I know it's not all vehicles, but I mean, did you guys do some research? Like, if you're going to buy a car, does it make more sense now because cars are crazy, right? You go buy a whatever and it's $30,000.
I think a lot of the times it does. I mean, like I said, I bought a Tacoma this year, and I had been looking, and I had kind of given up because I was like, people were like, here's a 2004 Tacoma with 100,000 miles, and it's $25,000, and it's like, get real.
Jesus.
Like, no way.
Wow. I heard that. I heard that from somebody that was telling me about the Toyota Tacomas, that there's this weird cult. It's almost like a cult thing, right?
It is,
going
yeah.
like, wow, you're getting like a 94 whatever Tacoma is going for the like 10 whatever it is, right?
Yeah, I got a 2011 with 60,000 miles for a really good price, and I drove to Portland to get it because I was like, I need this, and
Yeah.
and it's just like, yeah, there's so much of that going on right now. I sold my Element recently for more than I paid for it.
No kidding.
And it has since, I put 70,000 miles and 5 years on it, and I sold it for more. And I included
Amazing.
the camper build, but still.
Yeah, the camper build, that is a little bit. Well, so on this Promaster, so when you guys, I'm imagining it's going to be just dialed in with everything, right? That it's going to be a class whatever RV.
Yep.
So now what would you sell that thing for just roughly now after it's all built out?
It's going to be, over six figures, probably like around $100,000. And then, compared to a lot of the other ones that are on the market, it's a steal.
It's still a deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's new, so that's great. And, that helps, with the longevity. And, I think that can be one of the biggest things in the pre-built van market that I find hard to swallow, is like people will sell a Sprinter van with 100,000 miles on it, and the conversion is new, but you've got so many miles on the vehicle already, and they're still asking $150,000 to $200,000 for the van, and it's just like, that feels like a tough investment to swallow.
That is tough, because it's like anything, once you go over 100,000 or whatever, I mean, just stuff on the vehicle starts breaking down, right? I mean, you need brakes, everything. I mean, it's just like
Totally.
It's a vehicle.
Yeah, it's like you're spending, just so much money to keep it going, and it's like it's hard not to want to keep it going because you already spent this much on the van, and so we would prefer, if we're selling the vehicle ourselves, just to give it to you fresh, still under warranty, and have people feel better about just kind of the lifespan, because at this point it doesn't matter. Like, you're not paying more because it's new. It doesn't matter anymore, so might as well just give it to you new.
Interesting. Cool. Well, I wanted to check on the Olympic Peninsula. I think I might have to hold that one for a later conversation. I know you mentioned you're going on a trip here, so maybe we can get a follow up with you and hear about how that went. That's an area that I'm hoping to get out to more. But yeah, we'll leave it there. Steve, I'll respect your time here today. If people have questions for you, we'll send them out to Camp N Car. That's Camp N, not and. It's CAMPNCAR.com. And we'll put links in the show notes as well. So yeah, thanks for taking all the time today, and appreciate you shedding some light on this cool, the build out stuff.
Right on. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
So there it is. wetflyswing.com/349. 349 will get you some of the links. You can take a look at what Steve has going there with some of his build outs, and you can see some of those unique things we talked about today. He's got something that's probably going to fit just about any car. So take a look. This was definitely, we were trying to expand things, check out something of interest to some of the folks out here. But before we get out of here, I want to give a listener shout out to Nigel. Nigel. You know who you are. Thanks for taking a moment to check in with me and letting me know you've been enjoying the podcast. I'd love to hear from you. If you get a chance, you can just send me a quick email, dave@wetflyswing.com, or on social. I'd love to hear if you've been listening to the show, if you haven't checked in with me. Definitely love to hear from people out there. That is what helps me going strong. And if you have an episode or a topic you'd love to hear me dig into, I'd definitely love to serve that up for you as well. So what is your camping vehicle? What do you got going this year? Are you going to be doing the same thing in the past? Are you kind of doing the tent camping thing, thinking about maybe a camper? Do you have a pickup? Do you have what do we talk about? Some of the cars in here that sounds like, what was the Element? I think the Element was one. Even the Element, which isn't super long, you can transform anything into a place to camp. When we did the trip to Wyoming, that was one of those things where we probably could have had a better setup, and we kind of made do with what we had. But if we would have had one of these Steve's setups here, it definitely would have made things a little bit easier.
So we'll see. Maybe this next year we'll have one of these, get these good to go. That's it. I'm going to get out of here, get on to the next episode. And that next episode is going to be a good one. We got Semperfly on, synthetic fly tie materials. We got Ann and Andy, the mastermind brains behind Semperfly. We hear about how they created one of the, actually one of the best companies in the UK. They won the Queen's Award, so that's a really interesting story about how that all went down. So stay tuned next week. Click that subscribe button or follow button. If you haven't already, you'll get notified when that goes live. And if this is in the future, that episode should be ready to go. Just click on to that next episode, 350. Give her a shot. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks for your support. Thanks for checking in today, and I look forward to catching you on the water or maybe online. I hope you're having a good evening, a good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.